Hey there, what is happening, boys and girls? Thanks for tuning back into the channel today here at the Rustbelt Mechanic. We are rocking in here for part 2 of our diesel external fuel tank installation here on the good old big girl Duramax. So today we're going into phase 2 of this one. First phase in video 1 showed you guys cleaning up, doing some aluminum welding, fixing up the tank that I had to install in this one. And today we're going to be going through exactly what I'm doing for mounting and actually plumbing the unit. From there, going through a filtration unit down into the tank. Now, most of these fuel tanks that are in these units are going to be gravity fed, where they just have a line coming off the side of the tank, go down into a T-fitting within the filler neck on the actual truck. I wanted to have a little bit of extra filtration because, you know, these things sit out, they're on top of the actual truck. People might put something in it. I'm going to try to keep a locking cap on it, but at the same time, I don't trust human beings at the same time. So this might give you guys an alternate way of hooking this thing into your system based off of what guys mostly do on these diesel trucks. So let's jump in and see what I've got started. Now, I'm not going to go through the actual mounting because, as you guys saw in the last video, I had two little tabs on the sides of the tank, and it literally just sets in there and it mounts with 2 bolts and some nuts and hardware and everything. So actually mounting the tank is not something that's really hard to do. So what we're going to be going through is exactly what I kind of pointed out at the end of the last video in my kind of conglomeration here of all kinds of crazy fuel parts and nonsense here. So I put this together ahead of time, and I needed it to base off of some room and space. And originally I wanted to put it in, let's see where I got the thing, that little case right over here, that weatherproof case that I showed in the last video, but space-wise that just wasn't going to happen. So the next best thing was to mount this thing a little bit lower because the Mr. Gasket fuel pump here is a 95 gallon per hour fuel pump. This thing is a gravity fed pump, so it does have to sit lower than any fuel level. So I wasn't able to, you know, mount this thing up inside the toolbox or anything, so it's sitting down here tucked up into the frame rail. You're not going to be able to see it from the side of the truck really, so not going to be peeking out or anything like that, but I wanted to put an extra filter in here as well. So you can see that the filter unit that I ended up picking up is a Caw-Fill. Part number is R12T. This is a filter and water separator unit all in one. I really like that one, and these filters for these are actually pretty cost effective too. So really like that one. Next thought was, all right, well, this thing needs plumbed into my existing system, and if you guys know, before I've already installed the, hop under here, the AirDog 165 system. So on that AirDog system, we can check out right here that it tees into our filler neck. So it has that nice T-fitting with a 1/2 inch hose that goes into that. So there's not really much room for me to put another T-fitting into this hose area, so I needed to utilize that one. So I don't know if it's kosher to tee into a T, but that's what we did, guys. We teed into the T, and we teed right into our return line from the 165 unit. Now, there's not going to be a whole lot of diesel kind of pumping in through that. It's just what it doesn't need all the time. But at the same time, there is going to be diesel fuel pumping through this. So here's where my thought process went. Now, if my Mr. Gasket pump is turned off, I'm not sure if there's an actual check valve built into that unit. So if we are teed into my return from the AirDog unit, I was kind of worried about fuel feeding into this T and going back up in through the unit and actually back into the tank, which I really don't want fuel going the opposite direction, especially through the fuel filter assembly. So in thinking about that one, that's why I put This little bugger here, I think it's a US General, just a one-way check valve, an electronic solenoid. So fuel is actually going to come into this little fitting right here, in through the fuel filter, and out that one there into the pump, sucks it and then pushes it. And then this is going to be energized. When you energize it, it will open up the valve, that solenoid, and allow fuel to go through it. If this pump is not running, this will just automatically shut off. It's a spring close when you take power away from the two leads to it. So if we have fuel pressure running, then it will not feed back into the rest of the system when I don't have the switch on. Now this is also, like I said, a 95 gallon per hour pump, and that's going to be pumping a decent amount of fuel, and the amount of fuel coming through the return line on here, from what I was doing reading, at most is not a lot, and so we're looking at a lot lower fuel pressure, so we're going to be pumping more of our fuel from here into there, and we're not worried about it kind of backfeeding into that unit because fuel is pumping this way. So all the fuel will be going into the filler neck, at least that's kind of what I'm hoping, guys. We will be testing all this theories and stuff out for how well it works here later on in the video, but I just wanted to show how everything got mounted and put together right here. I kind of had it all put together ahead of time. So the only things that I need to do, I did get the hose that feeds from the solenoid into the T, but I do not have the line yet that goes from our filter unit up through the bed and into the side of the tank. These are running some AN6 fittings, and I really wanted to show a special tool for you guys today for figuring out a solution for some custom AN lines and fittings. So let's check this out. So this one's going to be from a company called Dimepsi. They actually sent me this kit to give it a try for some projects just like this one, and using specialty lines that I need to be and have made for pretty much any application that I could think about. You know, I was asking them, can it work for power steering? Can I make some custom cooler lines for my transmission, or these fuel lines for an auxiliary fuel tank? All of which said yes. And this is the kit that you're going to need to be able to start off with making those custom lines. So this is their Dash 6 kit, and they have other sizes as well. So in this kit, you're going to have a whole bunch of different fittings, different sizes, adapters, and different just ends that you would need for connecting onto whatever fittings you might be. We've got everything from, looks like a 30-degree angle, and it's all nice and laser etched onto each one of these parts, 30-degree angle, all the way up to a 60-degree angle there. And I think that we go all the way to a 180. Yep, we have a 180-degree set of fittings, and it is 2 of every single angled fitting there. The one that I think we're going to be using today is going to be these 90s, because we come straight out of the tank and need to go directly down through the bed. So how exactly do these work, you might say? Well, let me put a couple of these together just to show you. So we've got our kit here, and then we're going to grab a couple of our fittings. Now we have the actual rattlesnake, which is, you know, kind of what the rattlesnake kit is named after, and this is for our Dash 6 midline hose for what we're using for transmission oil line feed hose. Now the really cool thing about these mid fittings are that they are interlockable, interchangeable, and you can add as many of these together as you want. Now the cool part is they bend and move exactly to whatever angle you might need, but they only bend so far. They only bend as far as the hose that we're going to be getting for this application can actually go. So if you guys want to go with some different kind of hoses, they have different kind of connectors here for different things that, okay, I need an extra flexible hose, or I need an extra stiff brake line like a braided steel hose. There's actually a different set to be able to use for that that's going to actually flex a lot less. You don't want to be able to flex it more than your hose that you're getting is actually going to be able to do. So we've got the flexible interconnection ends here. We're going to put it onto one of our 90-degree ends that we're going to be wanting to use, and it nicely locks into place onto an end. And you can make these as long as you want, as short as you want. This is pretty much going to be a custom fitment part to exactly what we need. So we're going to have this one mounted onto the output of our fuel tank. It's going to come down through the bed, and it's going to make a curve to this direction. Now the other thing, which is the heart of the tool, what you need to put someplace in the midsection of this whole unit, is this little dial set right here. Now this is going to make a couple of different measurements for you. So we're going to lock it into place with our hose set right here, and then we're also going to be able to turn a certain amount of degrees, because if I was going to put another set of links onto the other end and another fitting onto this end as well, you know, these 290s, I may need them to be at a different angle from each other. And that's where we're able to turn this, and we'll have a reading for later on with our angles there. Now, this is an unlock and relock, so you can lock this tool into place. The next really cool thing that it has is, you know, maybe this hose is not just quite long enough, but it's too long if I put one whole extra link in. Loosen this thing back up, and this little gauge here is going to turn up to one of these extra links. So you're like, I need a half length in there. That is going to be a reading of your extra millimeters that you need in that hose. So after you get this thing all kind of set, dialed in, exactly routed how you want it, coming from the tank down through the bed over into 90 degrees to where we need with our fuel filter assembly, or even coming down like that, that's what we're going to kind of need right there. We'll lock it into place, and then we'll go over to Dimepsi's website, where we will enter all of this information. So you can see here with the rattlesnake unit, we've got our 90 degrees connected down here at the pump, and then it goes up through the actual bed and up into and connected to the actual tank unit. So we're going to be able to get our readings right off the rattlesnake unit and put those in to go and get our final hose. All right, now we're on their ordering site, and it's super easy. You just go to the customize hose, and this is what you're going to be entering. For this one, we had -6, choose our application, everything from air, battery cooling, coolant, diesel, dry sump, fuel, gas, high vacuum. This one is diesel. Choose your hose type and color. This is going to be the blue Superleggera. So your hose segment count, that is how many little blue links are in there. Mine had 47, so we put 47 in. And choose our fitting 1, which was the 90 degree piece. Our fitting 2 was a straight piece. The dial size, choose which dial you use, the small or the large one. We had the large dial on here. The dial rotation did not matter, so we were at dead 0 degrees because one is straight, one is 90. And then our set dial, which was our kind of little half or whatever size you would want to say on there, we had that one set to a 7. So we had that one set to a 7. Fire sleeve on this one, not required. This is going to be either Rustbelt, aux, fuel line. Are you happy with this configuration? Yes. Add to the cart. Hose price, $59.58. That is not too bad, I'm gonna have to say. When you're talking about custom lines being made, when you have these really nice ends to them as well that the Dimepsi segments are gonna have, I think this is gonna be a really great thing to be able to do. Something they might be interested in is getting, you can see they've got their whole rattlesnake hose kit here for the hose design. So like I said, pretty easy on their website. The use of their actual toolkit and their website is fantastic. That's why I say go ahead and check these guys out. So it looks like we're gonna fast forward just a little bit here in the video. My whole issue that I had was I was trying to do all these projects pretty much last minute. I'm trying to get all this stuff done before I went up here to Wisconsin to Ryan's Diesel Service for this big truck show this weekend. So it's my fault that I was trying to rush everything, but last night we got everything all mounted. The hose came in. We got the new transfer hose that went from the tank down to the pump unit. Got the pump unit all wired in. I'll show you the switch panel that I wired in here, and then let's check out exactly what we're doing and using with the switches. So you can see there in the lower section, there used to be just an open cubby right there on these Chevy trucks. It's just wide open. So I went over to XDP Diesel, and Longhorn Fab had this little switch plate thing that went in there. And then I ordered a bunch of these switches off of Amazon. Now, one thing that I found to be a kind of an issue with this one was those switches, which are universal fit switches. They didn't want to fit in there at all. It's like the actual piece from Longhorn Fab is too tight, so I almost had to shave down each one of those switches to get them to fit. But whatever, long story short, they're all wired in there and everything. They're all put into place. And I've been driving now for quite some time, and I did use this once, but I wanted to be able to kind of do a time lapse here of, or not a time lapse, but to show you how quick this thing is going to be pumping everything over into the normal tank. So right now, we have right at under half a tank of fuel there on the gauge. So we've got that right there. And right now it is 11:07, and we are going to turn our switch on, and we'll see how long it takes us to get to about a full tank. Alright, shutting the switch off, and right now on the gauge it's reading just above 3/4, well, between 3/4 and full, and we went for right at 15 minutes time on that one. Now I wanted to stop it there because you guys got to watch out. These gauges don't really adjust all that quickly. They are a couple minutes behind, kind of like if you were to refuel your truck or your vehicle while it's running at a gas pump without having the vehicle off. It takes longer for the fuel gauge to, I guess, catch up. Not really sure on, exactly why it does that, but I don't want to overfill it. But the last time I did this one on the trip here a couple hours back, I stopped it right here and it went all the way up to the full line. So that would be a full tank right at about 15 minutes on running the pump. So I think that is pretty darn nice, being able to have that ready on the go. All I gotta do is reach down, flip a switch, and we're good to go. I really, really like it. Now, some of the other weird things that I found out when, going through all this whole auxiliary tank thing and trying to put it into the Duramax here, one is filling it up. So it's a 100-gallon tank. It's not going to hold a full 100 gallons, but it's going to hold, I believe it's like 90% of that, so it's like a 90-gallon tank, even though it has a capacity of 100 gallons, but whatever. So to fill this thing up, though, you take it to a gas station, and if you don't pay cash, if you use a bank card or check card or any kind of credit card, a lot of places max you out at like $75 or $100 at a time to fill these things up. And I just filled it up. It was $3.08 a gallon. So, whew, buddy, man, putting all this into there, I ended up spending right about $275 to fill it up most of the way. But you know what? I'm about to my destination here in Wisconsin, and I didn't have to make any stop other than to grab something to drink and to take a leak real quick at one of the rest stops. I didn't have to get off any of the exits, so that was super nice, being able to do that one. Not having to be around any of these, dumb people, dumb big service stations and stuff. Less time spent there is better time on the road and actually getting to where I need to go. So think about that one also when you're doing an auxiliary fuel tank. Last thing that I'm really wanting to look into is figuring out how much fuel is actually in the tank. I was kind of looking around online, and the resources for some of these tanks are very few and far between. I'm very surprised that there's not like one really well-known manufacturer for parts and everything for these tanks, especially in the aftermarket world. I'd like to have some kind of a gauge to be able to put digitally up here into the cab for it. I did find a couple of manual gauges, ones that just screw into the opposite port on the tank, because these tanks, they have 2 ports, one on each end. There's like a manual gauge that just has a sight glass on top with a little red floater in it. They've got ones like that. They also have ones that screw in and just have a dial gauge that you look at from the top. But either way, on those, you actually have to get out of the truck, go back and over to it to see how much fuel is in the tank. You can't see it from here. So if you guys have any suggestions on finding some kind of a gauge or way to see how much fuel is in that tank here in the cab, please message me over on Instagram or leave something in the comments here for people to be able to see that one, because I think that would be something absolutely clutch for having on this situation. You guys are making cross-country runs and you're not wanting to stop and, you know, get up into bed and check and see how much you've used. You know, even with, you know, having done this now twice, I've got a good idea, but at the same time, it'd be really nice to know exactly how much is in there. Speaking of knowing exactly, time-wise, when we flip you around here, I told you that I was kind of, well, let's go down, that you had to wait a minute for that gauge to adjust, and in the time of me talking right there, the gauge is now reading full on the truck. So that is one really cool thing that you kind of got to watch out for. You can't wait until that gauge is all the way full to shut it off, because by that time, your pump is probably overfilling it and it's dumping out of the fill tube right there. So that's not a good thing. So shut it off a little bit early. If, you know, 5-10 minutes goes down the road and you still got a bit more to go, click it back on for a minute or so, click it back off, you know, do it that way if you really feel like you have to top it off. But, you know, just watch out for that one. Well, boys and girls, that's about all I've got for you guys today. I am almost to my destination here in North Prairie, Wisconsin at the Ryan's Diesel Truck Show event. Unfortunately, probably by the time this video airs, the event will have already happened and it will have been an amazing time. So make sure you stay tuned to that, turn on that bell notification so you get notified when I come out with cool, awesome content just like this one here today. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. I appreciate it. And as always, you guys stay awesome.